Okay, we should be.
There's our world traveler, Mr. Taylor.
Yeah, hello. How is everybody? Now let me make sure this recording was going because it should be going here. Do you see the recording button going there, Mr.
I
Brown?
do. I see
Okay,
it up
good.
in the left-hand corner of the screen.
Okay, good. So what I want to talk about, folks, is that the Yeti is a real mystery. And we're all right now living in social distancing. And the Yeti is a good thing to keep in mind as we're experiencing social distancing, because the story of the Yeti comes from Mount Everest. And you all know what Mount Everest is, right? Will somebody in the class tell me what Mount Everest is? Just shout it out.
Go ahead. What? It's what, Nicole? Say loud.
The largest mountain in the world.
That's right. It is 6 times bigger than Spruce Knob. And so you have here in the background a picture of Mount Everest. Okay? Now, from Mount Everest, the story of the Yeti comes because the people who were trying to climb Mount Everest found these mysterious footprints in the snow. And here is the most famous of those footprints. And you can see by the axe head that is below that footprint that this is about 13 inches long. Okay, it is a Bigfoot. And now in America, we have something that we call Bigfoot. Okay, but the question is, and this is a really good, important question, what made this footprint? Because there are some things that we believe in that we don't have evidence of, but we still believe in them. Maybe the Easter Bunny? Is the Yeti like the Easter Bunny? The Yeti, however, makes footprints. So when you see a footprint, you have evidence. You have scientific evidence. You have something you can measure. You can have something you can photograph. So the question that became very interesting for me when I was in 6th grade, okay? You can relate to 6th graders, I think. When I was in 6th grade, I lived in the Himalaya Mountains. And I said, I can find this Yeti. I can go out into the mountains and go out into the jungle and I can find out what is making that footprint. So I started to search in the mountains where I lived. It's like if you went out and started to search the mountains of Spruce Knob or go up into the South Fork and search in the woods. And this is a picture of the Himalaya Mountains where I lived. And I kept asking the question, what was making the footprint? Because something real was making the footprint. And so I wondered, is it the snow leopard? And this is a picture of the snow leopard. Could it be the snow leopard walking through the snow that was making that footprint? And it might have been, because a cat can put its feet on top of its or other feet and make strange looking shapes by the 2 feet falling on top of each other. Or I said, is it some strange monkey? And here's a picture of the rarest monkey in the world. It lives at 18,000 feet and it eats moss. And it is called the snub-nosed, the black and white snub-nosed monkey. And I said, could this be the Yeti? could this be making the footprints because this monkey lives so high in the snow? Or I said, could the Yeti be a hoax? Could the Yeti be somebody walking around, some human walking around with funny fake feet and leaving these footprints in the snow in order to trick people? Because a lot of people like to play tricks on each other. So I was looking through these mountains, and here is a picture of one of my expeditions. And this is you can see the yaks in the front of this picture carrying our expedition supplies as we went through these high snow valleys with these huge towering mountains. And I was looking and looking for what might make these footprints, because something real was making the footprints. It wasn't imaginary, because footprints are like fingerprints. They're proof of the real. And these are beautiful places. There's the high mountains, as you can see. There are also grassy meadows where people graze their yaks and their sheep, just like we graze our cows and our sheep here in Pendleton County. And I asked the local people, what do you think is making the Yeti? And what do you think is making these footprints? And they said, oh, it's definitely a wild beast out there, and you have to be careful because it might eat you. And it especially likes to take children and put them in the cave and feed them insects.
Yeah.
And it will keep these children as prisoners in the cave, feeding them insects. But the interesting thing is that if their parents find those kids in the cave and catch their kids and take them home, and they feed them ashes from the fire, their children will become normal again. And I said, you know what? You don't have any proof of that. That's just a story. That can't be true. So I kept looking for what was true. What did we have evidence of, not just stories? And I began to be suspicious. I began to be suspicious that the Yeti might be a bear. Because a lot of you know bears. Some of you may have family members that hunt bears. Some of you may even been out hunting bears yourself. And bears are very much like humans in many regards. So I became suspicious that maybe the bear was the explanation. And so after years and years of work, remember I started this when I was in 6th grade. And 30 years later, actually 26 years later, after looking, I had a PhD, doctoral degree. I had been all through the mountains. I was able to do something very interesting, and I won't give them the details, but I trapped the black bear. Earlier, I had shown you the brown bear. But then when I trapped the black bear, I was able to study its feet and measure its feet. And then we found with the tranquilized bear, we were able to put its prints and make plaster casts. And what we showed is that the front foot of the bear, which is the picture in the middle, the black circle here is a way of measuring. It is 52 centimeters, 52 millimeters across. That's basically 2.5 inches. Okay, that the front foot of the bear, when the back foot of the bear, which is the picture on the left, comes down on top of the front foot, that what then is made is this picture here, where you can see the front foot sticking out with the toes in the front. And then you can see here on the back, I don't know whether you can see my little arrow going around. Here is where the back foot came down on top of the front foot, which is the clothes and the taws here. So if you go back to this picture, here, you will see that this is the front foot with those toes and the claws, and here's the back foot with this big bulky end on it. So that makes, I'm showing you these pictures, that makes this print here. So then now what was my choice, what to do? And I was living on Spruce Knob at the time, and many of you have been up to Spruce Knob. Some of you may even been up to the Experience Learning campus up there and seen some of our buildings. Right now, I'm talking to you from McCoy's Mill. And many of you know McCoy's Mill because you take time at the Thorn Creek Park, okay? So I was living in Pendleton County, and I said I could make a career and a lot of money by showing up in a Yeti suit, like you just saw me in, right? And getting on stage and taking off my mask and taking off my suit, Yeti suit, and showing that I'm just a regular person. Okay? I could make a lot of money going and giving lectures and doing that and explaining the mystery of the Yeti. And magazines such as National Geographic or Wikipedia on the web, they all began to accept my explanation. But I said the more interesting thing is to make a national park. So we started with one national park on Mount Everest, which is down here. And it was so successful because we did something different than other people had done with national parks. We involved the local people. It's like here in Pendleton County, where we have our national forests, the George Washington over on the Virginia side and the Monongahela over on the Randolph County side. If we ran our national forests in partnership with we the people of Pendleton County, we the people would get jobs. And we need jobs so that you kids, when you grow up, can stay here in Pendleton County and find good work. So we started a new type of national park that had never been done before, which was national parks being run by the local people. And you can see here in this picture, all the national parks that were created throughout the Himalaya Mountains. Some of these parks are huge, the size of Arizona. This park here is 10 times bigger than the state of West Virginia. And these all were done in partnership with the people. And it all began here on Mount Everest, the highest place on Earth for what may be the highest need on Earth for how do we live in partnership with nature. So that's my explanation, and I will happy to take any more questions that you might have.
We actually do have a lot of questions for you. And what I'm going to ask, if this is okay, I'm going to have each of the students come up that want to ask questions, and you can talk to Mr. Taylor so he can see your face. Okay? Nicole, she would like to go first. And you have your question, or do you know what you're going to say? Okay. Yeah. Here, come right here, honey. Look right here at the camera.
How
Hi,
big
Nicole.
She said hi.
How big is Nepal?
How big is Nepal? Great question. Nepal is the same size as Tennessee. Do you know how big Tennessee is?
Yes.
3 times bigger than West Virginia.
Good question. You have any more questions?
Yeah, and now the interesting thing is that where I was working, found the Yeti was in Nepal. So your question's very good. And then I went across the border to China in Tibet, and we did work there. So that on both sides of Mount Everest. Good question, Nicole.
Good job. Yeah, Bethany, you can come up here and ask the question. Let him see your little faces. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Bethany.
Hi.
Here, bend down just a little. See? Yeah, you're good.
What mountains have you climbed?
I've climbed a lot of mountains. I've climbed Spruce Knob. Have you ever climbed Spruce Knob?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. Well, the highest mountains I've climbed are 5 times higher than Spruce Knob. I've climbed the eastern peak of Mount Everest, not the central peak, but I've climbed 14 mountains that have never been climbed before. And that's what I really enjoy, is being the first, because you have to figure out the route. You have to figure out the puzzle And I'm sure you like to do puzzles of various sorts. But for me, the interesting puzzle is figuring out how to climb something that's never been climbed before.
Good. Yeah, Lily, come on up.
Did you
Hi,
ever
Lily.
This is Lily.
did
Hi,
you ever
Lily.
meet the Sherpas?
Actually, I'm going to talk to you right now in Sherpa language. Lily, timi lai kastocha. Timi ramrocha. Okay, I'm speaking to you in Sherpa language. And I said, Lily, how are you? Do you happen to be healthy? Ramrocha. That's how you would say, I am healthy.
Right.
So it's a great question. And now you learned some Sherpa language. Kastocha means, how are you? Kastocha in Sherpa language.
Do you have any more questions about Sherpas? Can you tell us a little bit about Sherpas? We're getting ready to discuss them. They're going to be in our novel next week.
Fantastic. Sherpas are a tribe, okay? Sort of like, you know, we have Indian tribes, right? Cherokees and Navajos. Actually, we have people tribes, people from the North Fork, people from the South Branch, people from the South Fork. Those differences aren't very big between the South Fork and the North Fork, right? We're all basically the same. We're the tribe of Pendleton County. Well, the Sherpas are one tribe in Nepal, because Nepal is a place from which many different people came, from the north, from the south, and they settled in different valleys. Just as here in Pendleton County, we came from England, or we came from, if we live in the South Branch, or we came from Germany, if we lived in the South Fork, or we come from Ireland, if we live in the North Fork. So the Sherpas are people who came from specifically the north, the Chinese area, and they settled in Nepal.
So do you have any Sherpas that you're friends with still?
Yeah, I have many Sherpa friends, and some of you actually may have seen my daughter, who went to Franklin High School and graduated 20 years ago, okay? And we adopted her from Nepal, and she came from the tribal group of the Newars in central Nepal, where their capital is, Kathmandu. And so you have had at the Franklin High School a student who began in Nepal and then ended up becoming an American citizen and growing up in Pendleton County.
That's interesting, isn't it? Who else has a question for Mr. Taylor? Brina? Right here.
Hi, Brina.
Hi. What was your favorite part of living in Nepal?
I love it. Great question. My favorite part is probably getting out in the mountains. You saw pictures of how beautiful those mountains are and exploring them and discovering things such as the Yeti. But my second favorite part is meeting the people. They're simple people like we are here in Pendleton County. We sleep on the floors. We eat rice and beans. They call the beans lentils. And, you know, it's many of us here in Pendleton County lead simple lives too. And so the people around the world are just really just like us. They may have different colors of skin, they may eat different types of food, they may speak different languages, but I just love being friends with people from other parts of the world and going and visiting. And as soon as COVID is over, I hope you go and visit people from other parts of the world too.
Yes, me too. Okay. Tony. You can pull your mask down, darling. This is Tony.
Hey there, Tony, you looking cool, man. I love your hair.
We do too.
Thank you. How many countries have you been to?
I don't know, frankly. It's maybe it's over 70. But the question is, if you go to a country for one day, does it count? Or do you have to live there for a week? My friends say, if you go to the country and you go to the bathroom, that counts. That's actually not fair, because, you know, you could do that in the airport and never enter the country. So I can't really answer your question. So I lived in India for 10 years. I lived in Nepal for 5 years. I lived in China for 2 years. So I guess those countries count. But if I go to the country for just one day, I don't really count that.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, Emily. And you guys can double up questions. This is
Hi,
Emily.
Emily.
Why did you move to Pendleton County?
That I moved here almost by accident in 1973, and I am so glad I did. And the main reason is I love the people. And one of the things it's a lot of fun here with me in Pendleton County is I love to get in arguments. And Miss Brown will tell you that I get into arguments with her all the time.
That's
But,
true.
but the good thing is we always come out as friends. And what worries me in America today is that when we get into arguments, we're no longer friends. And that's not democracy. And so I came to Pendleton County because I love the storytelling. I love the people. I love the mountains. But now, after being here for almost half a century, I love my friends.
Can you tell us a little bit about things you've done here locally in Pendleton County? Because I told them a little bit about PCC. They think you're a celebrity, Mr. Taylor, too. Tell us some things that you've done here locally.
Well, I was the person who came up with the idea for Pendleton Community Care. And I raised the first money and we started the program. And many of you perhaps have Dr. Seeger as your doctor, okay? I think
Anybody have
everybody,
Dr. Seeger? We've got, yeah.
I think everybody at least has seen Dr. Seeger. Maybe you haven't seen me. Well, Dr. Seeger and I went to 11th and 12th grade together. And we first came to Pendleton County as 11th graders in order to go caving. And that's when I got interested in Pendleton County, back in 1963, okay? But in terms of other things I've done, I've started 4 different organizations in Pendleton County. Together, they employ about 100 people. So there are about 100 jobs here in Pendleton County that have come from the organizations I started, one of which is a university. And many of you will have seen our university campus on top of North Mountain as you drive from Franklin to Circleville. And please come in and visit us. Just drive up the driveway, knock on the door, and say, can I look around? Because you will see some buildings, the likes of which you've never seen before. Especially, you'll see 4 different types of staircases that will make you think you're back in Hogwarts with the funny staircases that they have in Harry Potter. But I've also started an organization on top of Spruce Knob called Experience Learning that also has interesting buildings that are round, okay? And I started a dog club here in Pendleton County, and that was a failure. I brought the rare dog from Marco Polo here. And so these are various projects, but right now I'm restoring McCoy's Mill. Many of you know McCoy's Mill. It's on the way to Thorn Spring Park. And this is actually the oldest building in Pendleton County. It goes back to 1753. And so our history in Pendleton County is something that I'm very proud of and I'm trying to support.
Okay, we have more questions too. Braylon?
How did you
Hey, you're a little eager. What position do you play?
usually third base or outfield?
Okay, so you're a slugger.
How did you get started on the Yeti?
As I say, when I was in 6th grade, I saw the footprint. And actually I saw the footprint in a newspaper in India. And it was on the front page of the newspaper was this footprint picture that I showed you. And the person who was running a museum in England had said that that footprint was caused by a monkey. And I knew that monkey because it lived around our house in India. And I said, no, it's an animal, all right, but it's not the monkey. So that langur monkey actually eats leaves. And I said, no, you're not going to have a leaf-eating monkey up in the snow. Come on, get real. So I began to search. So I got curious, just like maybe you're curious about something at about your same age. And I just decided instead of dropping my question, I would follow my question.
Is that good? Yeah, thanks, Braylon. Who has another question? Cheyenne. This is the one that you yelled at and scared and she ran to her desk about the Yeti.
Well, I'll scare you again, Diane.
Sorry, Cheyenne. Here she is.
What is the craziest thing that you have done?
Craziest thing I've done? Most of my friends will say I do a crazy thing every day. I enjoy it. It's fun. And I really can't answer your question because one of the interesting things is that when you start with something crazy, it often leads you to something creative. I really encourage you to try doing crazy things, Leanne,
Yes.
because then you can turn the crazy to creative.
Lily, you want to come back? Lily's back.
Hi, Lily. Good to see you again.
How many, how, have you ever climbed Seneca Rocks?
Yeah, I climb Seneca Rocks a lot. In fact, there are 2 routes at Seneca Rocks that had never been climbed before. So if you look at the guidebook, you will see my name as being the first person to go up those routes. And that goes back to my earlier point. I love to do something that not's been done before. So when I looked at Seneca Rocks, I said, oh, those are all sorts of interesting climbs, but what hasn't been done at Seneca Rocks? And I encourage you also to try to do things that you haven't done before or that nobody has done before, because there's a lot in this world that has never been done.
Right. Nicole, you want to come back?
What road do you live on?
You have to take your mask off, Nicole.
What road do you live on?
What
What
road
road?
do you live on?
Well, as I mentioned, I live here on Thorn Creek Road, just before the 4-H camp, but I also have a house just below the top of Spruce Knob. And that house, I cut the trees myself. I took them to Elkins and had them milled into timber, and I built that house. And so if you go up to the Experience Learning campus on Spruce Knob, you will see that house. So come by and visit. I would love to talk some more with you all.
Can you tell us a little bit about that fireman's pole you have at Future Generations? I got to see Mr. Taylor slide down a fireman's pole that he has in his business.
Yeah, and you all can come and slide down too.
I wish we could. Okay, hold on. Tell us, where did that pole come from?
Well, it came from Sites Fire and Safety in Ruddle. I went up to Charlie Sites and I said, you say you're a fire company. Okay. And he said, yeah. And he says, I used to sell fire engines. And I says, I want you to get me a fireman's pole. He says, I've never done that before. I says, well, come on, Charlie, you can do it. Many of you know Charlie Sites, I'm sure. And so that's where I got my fireman's pole, Laura.
That's hysterical. David, did you have a question? Does anybody else have a question? Lily's coming back with more. You can stand here and ask a few questions. That's fine.
When did you start studying the Yeti?
In 1956, when I was in 6th grade, on July 13th, when I saw that picture in the paper. And my recent book, which is published by Oxford University, so it means it's an academic scholarly book, actually answers a very important question. But it has taken me almost half a century, Lily, to understand this, that the Yeti exists in our mind, okay? And that's why it's so alive. It is not a wild animal out there. The prints are made by a bear. But this idea of an abominable snowman, this idea of a wild human being that lives in the mountains, that's in our minds. And so I first discovered it back then, but I had to study and think for a long time before I really understand that it's in our hearts, it's in our minds, and so much is there. Another question? Looks like you're all loaded with plenty of questions, Lily.
I have another question for you. Why did you believe in the Yeti?
Because of the footprint. Okay? When I was really little, okay, I believed in the Easter Bunny. Okay? But by the time I got to be your size, I no longer believed in the Easter Bunny. And I'm sorry if I'm disillusioning you and you still believe in the Easter Bunny. I apologize. Okay. But I'm assuming that you're so big that you don't believe in the Easter Bunny anymore.
I don't.
Okay. And maybe I hope I'm not popping anybody's bubbles. But we have no evidence of the Easter Bunny. Okay. We all know that some human being moves those eggs around. Okay. But with the Yeti, we had evidence, we had footprints. So there's something that's making that. So in your life, it's very important to separate what you have evidence for and what is just a story. And right now we're hearing a lot of stories about politics, about this and that. And what I would suggest to all of you, and that's why you're in school, and that's what Miss Brown is trying to do, is to show you the truth. And the truth needs evidence. That's what science does. That's what literature does. There's a difference between a novel, which I have also written, and a scientific book, such as my books on the Yeti, which are published by major universities, such as Oxford University or Johns Hopkins University. Evidence. Please follow the truth and follow evidence.
We just have been talking a lot about evidence. Okay, Bethany, she has another question for you.
Hey, Bethany, good to see you again.
Hey, what is your favorite thing you do in the fall?
Wow, it's probably eat. And if you want to have some interesting Nepali food, go to the Food Max as you come out of Harrisonburg on Route 33, go into the Indian food section, into the frozen foods, and there will be some frozen Nepali bread that you can cook on a skillet. It's called Parantha, Parantha. And it's flatbread, sort of like a pancake. You put it in a skillet, you warm it up, and I promise you, you're going to be asking to stop at Food Max again and buy some more because you'll love those breads.
I have a question. Actually, I have a request. Will you tell us a little bit how you got to meet the King of Nepal and what was that experience like?
Yeah, we became friends. Ultimately, the king was killed by his son, the crown prince, who shot him down with a machine gun.
This isn't fake. This is real.
This is real. The crown prince was angry at his father and his mother because they wouldn't let him marry the woman he loved. And so he killed both his father and his mother. Okay, that's the end of the story. The beginning of the story with me is that we were in school together. And I heard that there was this guy who was the crown prince of Nepal. And the school is called Harvard University up in Massachusetts. And I was working there as a student. I mean, I was a student there studying for my doctoral degree. And so I said, I'm going to go find this guy. And so I went around, found his dorm, knocked on his door, and then I began to talk to him in his own language. And nobody at Harvard had been talking to him in his own language, but because I had grown up there, I could speak the language. And so then we started to go out and have fun together. And then he became king, and we continued to have fun together. And so after I found the Yeti, I went to him and I said, Your Majesty, we called him Shahdev. I called him that. That was his personal name. I said, Shahdev, let's stop chasing the Yeti and let's make this into a national park. And he says, well, how do we make a national park? And I said, I don't know. Never done it before. Let's do it.
That's super interesting. Does anybody else have a question? Okay, Sabrina, come back.
Hi. Do you?
Is that a Wildcat mask you got on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Softball player. She's a lady Wildcat.
Okay.
Do you still go back and visit Nepal?
I haven't been to Nepal now for 1 year. It's because of COVID. Usually I'm on an airplane every week. In the last 7 months, I have not been on an airplane, but I actually love to go to Nepal. It's actually very remarkably cheap. How expensive do you think it would be to buy an airplane ticket from Shenandoah Valley in Harrisonburg to Nepal and back? Guess.
$300.
Well, I wish it were that cheap. It's $1,200, and it takes you one flight takes you 1 hour, then you get to New Jersey. Another flight takes you 14 hours sitting in the same seat for 14. You change in Delhi, India, wait for 3 hours and get on another airplane that takes you 3 hours and you're in Nepal. And so you can add those numbers up. It'll take you 22 hours from the time you leave, well, about 23 because you have to go through security. Basically, you'll have to be traveling for 23 hours or 1 day to leave your home in Petaluma County and then be doing some eating. Like I say, it's a lot of fun to do in Nepal.
Does anybody? Cheyenne. I'm going to have to raise my hand because I have 2 questions. Come on back.
You're getting, now we got more and more questions. I'm loving this.
Good.
How do you feel about COVID?
Well, obviously I don't like it. I think it sucks. But what worries me is not COVID, but we're wearing these masks, right? To protect us from COVID. But really what COVID has done is given us a gift. While COVID sucks, it has also given us a gift because it's shown that we have problems in our economy. We're losing jobs. The other problems there were before COVID. It shows we have problems with our politics because we're fighting each other, and democracy means we work together. Thank you very much. We don't argue and walk away. It's showing we have problems with food security because we don't have as good food now as we had even 8 months ago. Okay. And in some countries like Africa, there are famines now because of COVID. And it's showing that we have problems in our violence towards each other. I put up a sign on North Mountain a few days ago, and some people came and tore it down. Okay. We're being violent towards each other. In some cities, they're shooting each other. So what I think COVID is doing, actually, while it's terrible and we're very worried about it, it's showing us how we as people have to grow up, because we've got a whole bunch of people in this country that are acting like little kids.
Right. We talked about a quote this week. You can disagree without being disagreeable. And I am write that. Doesn't this sound familiar? Okay, Lily, come back.
Is the ride on the airplane scary?
Well, I'm going to tell you something. I've built my own airplanes, and that's a little bit more scary than running on an airplane. I started with fiberglass, and I spent 7 years and built it, 2 engines, flew it out to Wyoming, flew it around the country. But then you know what? I crashed it, and it was burning up. And my daughter was in the airplane, and she was 11 years old. And my niece, who also grew up here in Petaluma County, and my daughter and my niece pulled me out of the burning airplane because I was knocked out. So that was really scary, Lily.
Because my mom and me are supposed to go on one, and I'm kind of scared to go on one because of it.
No,
Of all the crashes.
actually, airplane travel is the safest travel in the world. It's much more dangerous to drive over Shenandoah Mountain than to get into an airplane. And there's some actually neat airplane trips that you can take out of Shenandoah Valley Airport. Or you can drive up to DC and to fly in a big airplane. That's probably less scary. But do fly. You can buy airplane tickets for $50. It's a good birthday present to ask for.
No.
Tell us, I'm going to jump in. Tell us a little bit about your parents. So we read your National Geographic article together as a class, and we were talking about missionaries. How did they end up where you grew up?
My grandparents actually were the first medical missionaries. They were cowboys in Kansas, and they decided at the time of the First World War, which was now 105 years ago, to go to India and be missionaries and do health work. So they weren't trying to convert people to Jesus as a religion. They were trying to show Jesus's love by doing medicine, because Jesus did a lot in terms of healing people. And we've all learned about that. Okay, so that's what they did. They went into India and they tried to heal people's sicknesses. And that's where my father was born. And my father was born in India at the time when there was a lot of jungle. And when he was just a little baby of 3 months, a she-wolf came and lifted him up out of his crib, because they were living in the jungle, and started to take him away. And the nursemaid hit the wolf, the she-wolf, and it dropped my father. So we lived in an India that was really a wild place. And that's how my father grew up. And then I went back to India when I was 2 years old. I was born in Pittsburgh, which is not that far from us here in West Virginia. And then when I was 2 years old, the British still ruled India, just like the British ruled us here in America, right? We were colonies. And India was controlled by Britain. And then I saw India getting its independence. And the role of missionaries was very important at that time, because it was showing people about who they were as people. And it's very easy to think now that missionaries are only about converting people to Jesus. But the larger role of missionaries is actually giving health care. It's starting schools. It's working on food security. And that's what most missionaries of the world did. That's what my parents did. Then my parents actually came back and were professors at Johns Hopkins University. So that they moved from being missionaries to being professors.
Does anybody have anybody have a question or another question? Okay, we have, Nicole, you want to ask one more question? This will be the last question, because I'll let you all go to fourth period. Okay. Ooh.
Hey, Nicole, where do you live?
North Mountain one.
Where?
North Mountain.
Okay. What's your last name? I think I'm trying to recognize you. I think I know who you are.
Mullen, Mullen.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. I've been trying to, when you all come up to ask me questions, I'm trying to place you all.
Do you actually know anyone in one of our families?
I'm sure I do. But we don't have time to start to go through it. I've been here for 50 years. Well, 48 years.
He's got lots of roots. And do you have, Mr. Taylor, any final thoughts for our class today?
Yeah, I think it's what I said earlier. Push the envelope. Do something crazy and make something crazy creative. Yeah, because you know what, folks? At your age, you're living in a crazy world. You know that now. You've learned that really fast in the last 6 months, that this is a crazy world. Don't fight it. You're going to lose. I promise you, if you fight in today's world, you will lose every time. The only way to deal with craziness is in developing creativity and figuring a path forward. Because fighting each other, you're going to lose every time. The modern change is so big, it's so fast, it's so powerful, that you as one person or you as your family is going to lose if you fight this process. You've got to learn. You've got to do the best you can in school, because I promise you, I never could have gotten to where I've done if I hadn't gone to school, all the way, in my case, through a doctoral degree. But you don't need to do a doctoral degree, but you absolutely need to finish 12th grade. If possible, you have to go on for more education, because if you don't have education these days, folks, you're going to be eaten by the system of change. So I'm glad you're in school. Congratulations to Miss Brown for trying to push the envelope and getting a Yeti to come to the class. I mean, she's nuts. She's creative, but she's also crazy. And so, Laura, keep pushing. Get them to be crazy, and then have them change crazy to creative.
Yeah, we love creativity. What do you guys say to Mr. Taylor for giving his time to us? Thank you so much. We appreciate it very much.
And Laura, this is loaded to the cloud. I will have my office send you a YouTube link.
Perfect. Good, because I have 2 other classes to show it to. They're all excited.
Okay, you will be getting I'm sure, a YouTube link very soon.
Oh, and we need to talk soon too.
Oh, yeah.
Same stuff.
Okay, well, we've got to also talk about bylaws. I've been talking with Joan and Quickiston, so more later.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Well,
No,
yeah.
it's talking. Bye-bye.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Bye.